Hello everyone, welcome to Nilanjana's exclusive English lessons. Today we are going to read the lesson, the chapter, the last lesson. And this story, like if we need to understand it, we also need to understand a little bit about its historical background. So, Alphonse Daudet, the author, he was a French short story writer and a novelist. Now, this story is actually written in the backdrop of the the Franco-Prussian War in the year 1870. So, what happened in this war? The war actually ended in Prussian victory, and the outcome of this war was the Treaty of Frankfurt. So, this treaty forced France to give up its territories, the regions of Alsace and Lorraine, to Germany. So, now Germany would occupy these two regions of Alsace and Lorraine, and these two regions were actually a part of France for centuries. So, definitely, you can understand that it was a humiliating defeat. We can feel the deep emotions, the national pride getting insulted, and it was a great loss for the French people. So from now onwards, after the war, since France they lost the war, the people had to live under the German rule. So French culture, French tradition, they were all suppressed. All right, and this story also reminds us one thing, that language is very close to a person's identity. It's very important to love, it's very important to learn your own language, because your language is your own identity. So let's begin the lesson. I started for school very late that morning, and I was in great dread of a scolding, especially because Mr. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. So the narrator rather, the narrator is a student, and he started for school quite late. Why? Because he wanted to avoid a scolding. Mr. Hamill was his teacher, and Mr. Hamill had already announced in the class that he would ask them questions on participles. So, participles, I hope all of you know that it is a concept in grammar, like how you have it in English, you also have it in other languages. So, he's talking about the language of French right now because they are learning French. So, Mr. Hamill is their French teacher, and I did not know the first word about them. So obviously the child did not study and he didn't know anything about it. That obviously that was the cause of his fear. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. So the day was very beautiful. It was a warm, bright day. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods. At the edge means at the corner of the woods. And in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. So the Prussian soldiers, they were drilling, like soldiers, they are practicing the way they should march ahead. So the soldiers often go for these kind of drills and practices. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So all these things, the outdoors was so nice and so enchanting for him that it was very tempting for him to spend his time outdoors rather than get into the confines of the classroom and learn the rules of participles. That was obviously quite boring for the narrator. But then, anyway, he had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. Of course, he knew that he's not supposed to miss his class, and therefore he hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. So, what is a bulletin board? Usually, notices are put up. Some important information is shared on the bulletin board. They are usually put up over there. And for the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. And I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? So for the last 2 years, Franz, the character, the boy in the story, of course, he always knew that anything which was not good, it was always shared through the notices put up on the bulletin board. Like the Prussian forces, whatever they wanted to tell the French people, the French villagers in this place called Alsace, so they would always share those commands through the notices on the bulletin board. And obviously, it was not liked by them, but anyway, there was no other option. When you know that you are living under the rule of someone else, obviously, you don't have your voice to raise. So, those who are reading the lesson, I hope you can connect. Like, when when India was under the rule of the British, how Indians used to be oppressed. Or even if you leave aside India, in many countries of the world, oppression is a very important factor. Like there are many countries, many rulers who try to oppress. Obviously, we are no longer, we are lucky not to go through such oppression in the recent times. But yes, there are many unfortunate countries, those who still suffer. So here France thinks that something must be wrong. Everybody, every time the people are gathering around the bulletin board, means something, some important information must be shared. So whatever the lost battles, the orders, whatever orders they wanted to give, everything was always shared through this. What can be the matter now? So he's asked himself. Then as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith Water, who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin, called after me. So there was a blacksmith. So I hope all of you understand it's a village. It's a small village in France. And one of the characters, one of the blacksmiths named Water, who was there, he was there with his apprentice. Apprentice is a person who works under you. He read the bulletin and he called. He said, "Don't go so fast, Bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time." The word bub means fellow. It's an informal way to address someone. So he said, "Don't go so fast, fellow. Anyway, there's a lot of time. You can still reach your school." I thought he was making fun of me and reached Mr. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So when you run very fast, you get exhausted. And he ran as fast as he could and he reached the school. And he was almost out of breath, feeling exhausted. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle. Bustle means when people are running in an energetic and busy manner, like rushing. Of course, you can understand because there are many children entering the premises at the same time. So there's a lot of chaos and rush, which could be heard out in the street, the opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. So these are some of the evidences that you can see or hear when you enter a school, like opening and closing of desk. If you have those kind of desks where you have to pick up the flap and enter, and then you put that back again, those sounds. Then children, how they repeat some words in unison together in a united manner. Sometimes teachers, they make the students learn and ask them to repeat together very loud, and sometimes they even put the hands over their ears so that they can understand and grasp the things better. So these were some of the common sounds, and of course the teacher's great ruler. In those days the teacher always carried a ruler, and now of course it is a different picture scenario altogether. But yes, ruler was something the teacher obviously carried. But now it was all so still. But that day it was very strange. There was a certain stillness in the atmosphere. Everything was very quiet. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. So, as a child, what did he plan? That during that commotion, I will quickly sneak in so that nobody notices me and I would be excused for my late coming. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as a Sunday morning. Now, usually on a Sunday morning, schools are very quiet because there are no students there. And that day it was very similar to a Sunday morning. Alright, those who are listening to the video till now, please, if you think the video was helpful, please subscribe to the channel and do share a like. Do share this video with your friends and please help me to grow this channel. Thank you so much for all those who have already subscribed, those who are supporting me. Thank you so much. I'm filled with gratitude. Yeah, anyway, let's get back to the class. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places and Mr. Hamel, walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. So, when he saw through the window, he saw that everybody was already in their place and his teacher was walking up and down with the iron ruler. I had to open the door and he had to get inside and he was feeling very humiliated. Why? That is the reason he blushed. Because in front of everybody he had to walk inside and he knew how late he was. He was ready for a rebuke. But nothing happened. Mr. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, M. Hamill is the name of the teacher. So I'm just addressing him as Mr. Hamill, but his name is M. Hamill. Please take note of that. And yes, what kind of a teacher he was? He was a very stern and strict teacher. But nothing happened. So he saw me and he said, Go to your place, little Franz. We were beginning without you. So go to your place. And he was unusually very calm that day. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So that day, when he looked at his teacher, he saw that he was dressed with extra care. He wore something which he never usually wore on a normal school day. He had his coat, he had a frilled shirt. So these kind of clothes are usually worn on a special day, on inspection days or on a prize when it is a prize ceremony. And he also had a black silk cap, all embroidered. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Solemn is serious. Everything seemed very strange. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser, with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had brought an old primer, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So, what was unusual that day? First of all, he was not scolded. He expected a scolding, but he was not reprimanded. And his teacher also spoke to him very kindly and just asked him that, yeah, go and sit down. The second unusual thing was that his teacher wore a very special attire, and such attires were mainly worn when it was a special occasion. And the next unusual thing that he saw, which also surprised him, was that many villagers were sitting there. Towards the end of the last bench of the class, there was old Hauser. He was a mayor. Then there was also the mayor, former mayor. Then there was a postmaster and many other people who were sitting at the back benches of the classroom. Primer is a small book containing the basic facts about a subject. Primer is a small book containing basic facts about a subject, and it is used especially when you are learning, you are beginning to learn anything. Then you usually carry such books. So thumbed at the edges. What does that mean? It means that it was slightly damaged. It had a slightly damaged appearance because when you frequently turn the pages, then the edges of the book usually gets worn out. That is the meaning of thumbed at the edges. It was an old book, so it was thumbed at the edges. So now, while he was wondering that why everybody is here today, that is when Mr. Hamill, he mounted his chair, means he went up to his chair. Usually the chair was kept on a raised place, a raised platform, and in the same grave is serious, in a very serious but gentle tone, he made a shocking announcement. My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive. So here comes the shocking announcement that today is your last French lesson. Okay, from tomorrow, German would be the official language because the order has come As I already told you in the beginning, that after the war, these are the consequences of the war which affects the common people. So now, from now onwards, children would no longer learn French, but they would be forced to learn German. All right, so that is the reason the teacher took extra care on that day to be at his best and to deliver the best lecture, to deliver the last lesson in the most effective manner. What a thunderclap these words were to me. A thunderclap means it was a great shock. It came like a thunder. Oh, the wretches, that was what they had put up at the town hall. So, obviously, he's not happy with this. So, he tells that this is an unfortunate happening, and this was the information that was put up on the notice board, the bulletin board, and that's the reason probably people gathered over there. My last French lesson? Why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Saar, my books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar, my history of the saints were old friends now that I couldn't give up. And Mr. Hamill, too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So, this is where his emotion, he gets emotional. So, he is telling that how it is possible that this is my last French lesson. I don't even know how to write. Now, see, a child often ignores his lessons because as a child he wants to play, he wants to spend time outdoors. We already saw in the beginning that spending time outdoors was more appealing to him. So obviously, this child, little Franz, he never must have taken these lessons, these classes seriously, because he always thought that, oh, I'm going to get my time and then I will learn. He always procrastinated. And what he did, he instead went to fetch the birds' eggs because these were like, adventures he was interested in. Sometimes he wanted to go sliding on the Saar. Saar is a river. And also his books. That seemed like a nuisance, means useless things. A while ago, suddenly it became so heavy to carry. My grammar. So my books, which were so nuisance a while ago, means so useless, so heavy to carry. My grammar, all these things now I have to give up. How is that possible? And Mr. Hamill too. The idea that he was going away, of course, he couldn't digest the fact. I should never see him again. It was very painful for him. And it also made him forget that he was a stern teacher, how many times he got scolded from his teacher, and all that, affected him greatly. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put up on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understand why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. So everybody wanted to be there on that day because it was the last time that they would be learning their own language. This is respect for your own language, and that's the reason Mr. Hamill was on his he had put up his best clothes, and even the villagers were there sitting at the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school. They had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. A very emotional line. When when you're living in a country and then suddenly you realize that this country is no longer yours because another power has taken over this country, you give up everything, all your culture, all your traditions, all your emotions, all your connection with that country, it just gets drained away. And so definitely it's very painful for everyone. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say the dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake? But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. So he wished that he would be able to tell everything without any glitches, but obviously it did not happen like that. He stumbles and he also starts stammering. He's called upon by the teacher for what? Because he had to recite the rules, which he was meant to learn, but we already know that he had never learned it. So now he starts stammering, and he was very ashamed to face his teacher, and he even did not dare to look up. I heard Mr. Hamill say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we have come out. Ah, that's a great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. So, what did the teacher say? He said that, see, all this while, when we had the opportunity to learn our language, what did we do? We have always put it off. Means we have always kept delaying. Every time we said, oh, we have time. Why, why to waste time now? I'm going to learn it tomorrow. So this attitude of delaying things, what is it called? I already told you. It is called procrastination. And then now see where we have come. Now there is no time left. And that's the great trouble, because she puts off learning till tomorrow. We have all a great deal to reproach. So it is not just you are the one who is at fault. All of us are at fault in some way or the other. Reproach means everybody is to be blamed for some reason or the other. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. Now, this is a very common perspective of children living in the village, children who come from poor families. So, parents, they were anxious for the child to work so that they can support the family, and they did not emphasize the importance of learning. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? So I am also to blame. I have also at times sent all of you for running some errands like watering my plants and other things. So I'm also to blame. And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So I have also done some mistake. I am also to be blamed. Often when I wanted a holiday, I wanted to go for fishing, I just let your people free. Then from one thing to another, Mr. Hamill went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. So now he describes the beauty of the French language, that they need to guard it carefully because that is their identity. It is a key to their freedom. When people are enslaved, so when people live the life of a slave, as long as they hold to their language, as long as they are aware of their language, as long as they hold it close to their heart, it is like a key to their prison. Prison means what? You are in confinement, right? Uh, you are enslaved for your life, and but as long as you know the language, as long as you protect your language, that is like the key to your freedom. Nobody can enslave you as long as you uh, guard your language properly. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. So here we have the teacher who is dedicated to give the last lesson, the best of all he knows, and to make this last lesson as fruitful, as effective as possible. And when we consider the other side, like for example, the students, little Franz over here, he also wanted to grasp it as much as he can. The attention which he had never paid, the concepts which seemed difficult for him, all seemed like a piece of cake. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, Mr. Hamill had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of her desk. Mr. Hamill also gave a writing lesson for them that day. So, what did he ask them to do? He asked them to write the words France, Alsace repeatedly. Why? Because so that they can grasp the words and they will learn it by heart. And everybody in the class did it with a lot of diligence. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. This was a completely new scenario. Usually, children in the classroom they talk, they are naughty, they are inattentive. But here it was a completely different thing. So everybody could feel the pain of, uh, being in this last lesson, the last class of Mr. Hamill. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. So this was the only sound that was heard, and everything else was pin drop silence. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. On the roof the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So the only sound was heard, that of the cooing of the pigeons, and the way the pigeons made the sound, the child little Franz asked himself that will the Germans also force the pigeons to sing in German? Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Mr. Hamill sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there, in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. Mr. Hamill was looking at everything with a lot of detail. Why? Because he wanted to capture the image of the classroom in his mind. Very soon he had to leave that place. He has a lot of attachment to this place. He had spent 40 years over here as a teacher, and obviously it pained him a lot to think that this would be the last lesson. Only the desk and benches had been worn smooth, the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. So he's trying to understand that what are the changes that are noticeable uh, from the time or since the time he had started working over here. So the walnut trees were taller, the desk and the benches had some changes, and the hop vine. What's a hop vine? It's a kind of a stem, a climbing plant. So it had twined about the windows to the roof. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country the next day. So all the memories are very attached to his heart. He could understand the sound upstairs because his sister was packing their, their things, their belongings. They had to leave the country the next day, and everything. He was in love with this place. He had a lot of attachment with this place, with the classes, with the students, with his profession. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba, be, bi, bo, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remember it, that last lesson. So after the writing, they had a lesson in history, and then their the way their normal classes went on, and even Hauser, he had put his spectacles on. He was sitting at the back of the room, and he was holding the book in both hands. He also spelled the letters with the babies, the children. And when he was spelling, he was reading out the letters, his voice trembled with emotion. He cried. And it was so funny to hear him that we also wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. So it was a very emotional moment for everyone. All at once, the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill. So it was time now, it was 12 o'clock. So it also at the same time, the drill ended. The Angelus is a Roman Catholic devotion prayer, and it is also recited thrice a day. And once it is over, it is marked by the ringing of the church bells. So when the church clock struck 12, then the prayer also stopped, and at that moment the trumpets of the Prussians also stopped. Mr. Hamill stood up, very pale, in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. Now, I never saw him look so tall. This is not just tall in the literal meaning, but also figuratively tall, right? Like in France's eyes, he looked at his teacher with a lot of awe, respect, and with a lot of love, because he was a very respectable figure in his eyes, a teacher who dedicated his life for teaching his students and wanted to make every lesson so special. Vive la France. I may be little wrong in the pronunciation because this is supposed to be pronounced in French. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, you may go. So finally, it was the last moment. He made a gesture and he said, School is dismissed, you may go. Finally, the lesson comes to an end. A very emotional scene for everyone, because obviously, when you realize that this is the last day, a last class where you're going to use your language, your own language, a part of your identity, and you're going to lose it, obviously it is very emotional for everyone. All right, so now Franz, and he started as a young boy who wanted to play, who wanted to have fun, who wanted to miss his classes. But then later on, towards the end of the story, we can see that the feelings that he goes through is just like a man who is mature and who is serious. Okay, initially he was a young and carefree boy, but later on he evolved into a serious young man who understood that the world is not actually so simple. The world is indeed complex, where their country was no longer their country anymore. And he was very empathetic to the pain suffered by his teacher for leaving the country and also the school. Okay, so this is the story in short. And what is the theme of the lesson? First of all, the theme of the lesson is your love for your country, which is very important. Your patriotic feelings. Everybody has such feelings, and everybody loves their own country. So here, your spirit of patriotism is very strong in the story. And also language. Language is a person's identity. So you need to respect your language. You need to love your language because it is your identity. Don't copy others. Okay? Yes, every language is important, but uh, if you think that you need to learn and speak in English, because of course English is a language, official language in many places. Therefore, it is of course required for us to read, write, and study. But yes, your own language is also very important. You need to speak in that language. You need to communicate in your own language, your mother tongue. Never forget that, because that is your identity. So be proud of your own language. That is the beauty of a person's culture. That's all for today. If you like the explanation, do share, subscribe, and thank you so much for all the love that you have shown towards me, my channel. I will not be able to take the names of all the subscribers, but yes, those who have been with me in the membership program from the very beginning, a big thanks to all of you. And I'm sure I'm able to give you all the resources which all of you have asked for and all of you were looking for. I hope my explanations of Julius Caesar is helping you. And right now we have almost crossed 70 members, and I'm sure very soon I will be able to reach out to maximum people. Those who have not yet taken the membership, you can definitely go and check it out. It comes at a very reasonable price, and if you take the highest level, you will get access to all the videos starting from Act 3, Act 4, and Act 5.